what are they going to do to defend the middle class and the contrast between the two.
All right. Blaine's thoughts. Craig is in Northport, Florida, a Republican. Craig, go ahead.
Hello. I'd like to hear on tonight's debate some clarification on the migration acts, the temporary migration acts, and what's going to be done to curb the illegal immigration. I'd also like to see if Senator Walz can talk about the economy and not just give us a story about the middle class. Thank you.
So, Craig, you're a Republican. Do you know how you're going to vote in November?
Oh, absolutely. I am voting Republican this year.
Okay. And what is the number one issue for you that you're going to vote Republican?
The number one issue is illegal immigration and the economy. So two big issues, honestly.
Okay. And why do you think the former president will do a better job on those two issues?
Well, he was already in office for 4 years, and he proved that he can keep a stable economy. And we actually had some great progress with the economy under Trump. So I think that's why I'm voting for him.
And how do you think J.D. Vance helps the ticket on issues like that?
Well, I think he's a down-to-earth, grassroots-esque candidate who can relate to the middle class and the middle upper class. And so I think that's how he bridges the gap.
Okay. Eric in Bridgeville, Pennsylvania, Democratic caller. Hi, Eric.
Hello. Yes, my main question is, where is the common decency gone in this country? When J.D. Vance gets on a podium and talks about his own constituents saying that they're eating cats and dogs, where's the sense of society? Where's the sense of common decency in this country gone? Folks, this is unreal. How has it gotten this far? I don't know. The megalomania that JD has displayed, if you look at what he said just a few years ago, what he says now, it's truly terrifying. So that's what I hope Tim Walz asks about. Where's the sense of decency? Thank you.
All right, Eric there in Pennsylvania. We'll go to the senator's home state. Rick is in Dayton, Ohio, independent. Hi, Rick.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
My main concern is healthcare and why medical bankruptcy is unique American when every other country in the world offers guaranteed healthcare to their citizens. And I would love to hear both candidates discuss that, how it's going to be resolved, because so many people, as they enter near retirement and beyond, they save their whole lives, and then they get sick. And, as you get older, you need healthcare. It's just the reality of life. And why people have to choose between death and bankruptcy when it comes to our health system. I think it's horrible. So that needs to be addressed.
All right. Rick wants to hear about healthcare tonight. Brandon in Indiana, Republican. Brandon, what do you want to hear about?
I want to hear why Tim, they call him Tampon Tim, why he wants to put tampons in boys' bathrooms and little boys' bathrooms, little kids. And I also want to let you know, since I have it, the New World Order is on the run.
All right, Jason in Earlysville, Virginia, Democratic caller. Jason, let's hear from you.
Hey, what's up, Greta? So good hearing from you. I'd like to hear, I like the comment the guy made before, some decency, just remembering that kids are watching. And I also think that Walz is going to kind of do real well by reminding people that the Republicans need to stay out of everybody's business.
Okay. Joins in Petal, Mississippi, independent. Joins is Jones or Joins in Mississippi?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello. So I just wanted to, as what a few other callers said, it's just the decency. I know who I'll be supporting. I'll be supporting former President Trump, but just the lack of decency and the fact that politicians continue to stick to issues that divide us and not the issues that the majority of Americans agree on.
So, caller, where is the lack of decency coming from, do you think?
It's coming from both sides. After the assassination attempt, Trump called Kamala wicked, and Kamala was attacking Trump. I assumed there was going to be some sort of downplaying the rhetoric, like people said, but it was honestly the total opposite, and now we have such division.
So you don't want to hear that tonight from J.D. Vance or Tim Walz?
Not at all. I think it's disgraceful, the lack of decency that frankly both sides have.
All right, Stephanie in Arnold, Maryland, Democratic caller. Stephanie, what do you want to hear? Real quick.
Well, I'd like to hear Mr. Walz talk about decency and the lack of it on the Republican side, because we know from pretty much his adolescence, Mr. Trump has not been particularly decent to anybody. He was prosecuted as a slumlord. He's bankrupted several companies, not personal bankruptcy, but several businesses. He's known for not paying contractors, middle America. You want to work for a man who won't pay you, a rich man who won't pay you. As far as the economy, he's racked up more than $3.5 billion in.
All right, Stephanie, I will leave it there because we are now just moments away from tonight's simulcast of the CBS News vice presidential debate here on C-SPAN. Again, a little more than 90 minutes of debate expected tonight between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. After the debate, we'll hear your phone calls and see your reaction on social media and take a look inside the spin room in New York to see how the campaigns are spinning the debate. That's all here on the C-SPAN networks following tonight's debate. Tonight, with just over a month to go until Election Day, the first and only meeting between the two men who hope to become vice president of the United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back.
And we are ready to continue to build the future together.
We're going to turn this whole country red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
This is a CBS News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America Decides, the vice presidential debate.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor
What's up,
Tim
Griff?
Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight meeting for the first time.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Uh-oh. 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my mother
filibustering already
for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the.
I don't even want to hear the rest of this crap right here because he's just filibustering. Answer the question and move on. You know, I think Tim Walz was a little nervous when he first started off, but JD Vance, he just filibustering right now.
American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did.
Donald Trump did not deliver stability in the world. There was so much shit going on, but they don't want to talk about the soldiers who died on his watch. They don't want to talk about what was going on in Syria. They don't want to talk about what was going on in Iraq. They don't want to talk about none of that. So he wasn't this great enforcer of the world.
Recognize that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies
I
understand
made a video off
that
that.
Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
That's not true. Donald Trump had a
Gentlemen, we have a
major
lot to get
incident.
to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy.
Why is
I
this
just
guy
saw
always
today actually a
filibuster?
photograph
That's a
of
freaking
2
question,
grandparents
dude.
on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure
Oh
Governor
my
Walz
God.
joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally, and
Get to the
Appalachia,
question,
all across
dude.
the Southeast. They need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some
What's
of
up,
the
Mean
dirtiest
Mug?
parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount
Everything's
of
good,
carbon
man.
emissions
Everything's
they're
good.
doing
Appreciate your
per
accent,
unit of
man.
economic
Same, hope
output.
everything's good
So
with
if
you
we
also.
actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together to all of the governors and the emergency responders on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change
all right,
issue,
working
there's no
hard,
doubt
then,
this
working
thing
hard.
roared onto the
That's
scene
good, that's
faster and
good.
stronger than anything we've
You're
seen.
making that money.
Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts,
Thank you,
500-year
Griff.
floods back to
Appreciate that.
back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a
Well, you got to realize farmers have been hurting for years, though.
Use here. I'm talking, of course, about the
especially during the Trump
leadership.
years,
And
when
the
Trump
real
had to pay
issue is that
$27
if
billion
you're
to
spending
farmers just to bail
hundreds
them
of
out because of
millions or
his,
even billions
his
of
policies
dollars of
with
American
China.
taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production.
Meanwhile, you ready for Colin already to be the next
senator
senator in Texas?
40 years.
It's going to happen.
Natural
I told
gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by
your
the
time
climate.
is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives
there's no
to
way.
Mar-a-Lago, say, give me
There's no
money for
way.
my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter
I don't
about
see that
that. And
happening.
an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top
Now,
issues.
this right here is what I want to hear. Because I don't want to hear no BS from
Your
Vance.
campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I
don't even hear more about fentanyl. You know what? When they talk about fentanyl, I don't even want to hear about it because they had that bill that was going to put more machines on the border to help with fentanyl. They didn't want to pass the bill. So I don't hear nothing about fentanyl.
You've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations.
They're not telling you to lie. They're telling you nothing but lies.
And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers.
Those criminal immigrants they're talking about, it's over like 40-year span. It's not like it happened like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. This is over 40 years.
A fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border.
Why can't politicians tell the truth?
Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the attorney general of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts.
Actually, Slam, your state is kind of messed up right now. I was listening to the news this morning about North Carolina.
Get there.
They lost a lot of ballots because of the storm.
Detection for drugs. DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point,
it's pretty bad.
It was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris
you won't answer the question.
Drug mules. I said that she enabled the
She's not actually about Kamala Harris. She's actually about you. What would you do?
Know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace. and it has
This is
to
why I
stop.
hate
Look, I think what
debates.
Tim said just
And these
doesn't pass the
politicians,
smell
they
test.
refuse
For
to answer
3
direct
years,
questions.
Kamala Harris
Simple
went
questions.
out bragging
She
that
asked
was
him a
gonna
simple
undo Donald
question.
Trump's
Will
border
he
policy.
support
She
Trump
did exactly
if he wanted to
that.
separate
We had a
kids,
record number of
families?
illegal crossings. We
All
had
you
a
got to
record
say
number
yes
of
or no.
fentanyl coming into our
That's it.
country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first.
Why you gonna give him 1 minute
The
to
governor
say the
has
same
made
crap?
the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our border czar, Kamala Harris, has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want
So
to be
we at the
empowered
point
to
now
do their
where
job. Of
from
course,
this
additional
point on,
resources would
he's not
help,
going to answer no
but
question
most of this
directly.
is about the
He's just
president
going to
and the vice
filibuster. He's going to
president
talk about what he want to
empowering
talk
our law
about.
enforcement
That's
to
it.
say,
See,
if you
this
try
is
to
why
come
I hate
across the
debates.
border illegally,
Because
you've
we
got to
get to
stay
the
in
point where
Mexico, you've got to go
no
back through
one
proper
answers the
channels.
questions.
Now, Governor
So it's like,
Walker
what is the
brought
person
up
having
the
a debate
community
if
of
you're not going to answer the
Springfield,
question?
and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status temporary protected
Well,
status.
Margaret,
Nora?
but
Thank you.
Senator, we have so much to get to.
Margaret,
Thank you,
I think it's
Nora.
important
We're
because
going to turn now to the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going
we're-
to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important.
That
to
wasn't
say
a
what's
fact
actually
check.
going
She
on.
was just saying
So
who
there's
was
an
y'all was
application
talking
called the
about.
CBP
That wasn't
One
a, that wasn't
where
a
you can
fact check.
go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been
much.
on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
want to
One
have,
app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora?
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do
The question is,
now.
how would a
Not one asking
Trump-advanced
for a promotion,
economy
but a job the
plan
American
pay
people
for
gave her
housing and
3.5
social
years ago.
benefits?
And the fact that she isn't,
Why is he
tells you
talking
a lot
about Kamala
how
Harris?
much you can trust
See,
her actual
this
plans.
is like
Now, Donald
crazy.
Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attacked Donald Trump's plan plans and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits
what is his plan now,
they
though?
want to undo the Trump tax
What
cuts.
is his
But
plan
if
to
you
fix
look
the
at what was
economy,
so
though?
different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country.
That's
That is a
not true.
record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense
Obama had a
wisdom
better
so that
economy,
you can afford to
than
live
Trump
the
did,
American
and
dream
that's a
again.
fact.
I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop. And we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good.
That's a fact.
Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did.
He did. Yeah, for millionaires and billionaires, yes, he did for them, but no one else.
He did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is
What's up,
often
Rob?
the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy? You have 2
Yeah,
minutes.
well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the
All right, now,
streetlights come
Tim,
on,
don't
and I'm
start
proud
with
of that
the
service.
filibuster
I joined
now.
the National
Get
Guard
to
at
the question,
17,
get to the question, get to the
worked on
question.
family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher.
Come on, man, get to the
passionate about it,
question,
a
get to the
young
question.
teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers,
See,
and we
I'm
would go
fair
back
and
and forth
balanced.
to China.
Tim
issue
is doing
for
the
that
same
was
thing
to try
JD was
and learn.
doing,
Now look,
and I hate
my
it.
community knows who I am.
Either
They
you
saw
know,
where I was at.
either you're going to answer the question or you're not going to answer the
I
question.
will
It
be
seems
the
like he's
first
not
to
going to
tell
answer the
you, I
question.
have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people.
So
working
I
on things
guess
like farm
what
bills
they
that we
said
got
is
done,
true.
working on
You
veterans
lied.
benefits. And then the people of Minnesota
That's all you got to
were
say. I
able to
lied. I
elect
made
me
a
to
mistake and I
governor
lied.
twice.
And
So
then
look,
move the fuck
my
on.
commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you
I
he
hate
wouldn't be,
this. I
praising
hate
Xi
it when they do
Jinping
this.
about
A
COVID.
simple
And I
question,
guarantee you he
and they
wouldn't
don't
start
even
a
answer
trade
the
war that
fucking
he ends up
question.
losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community.
Was you
And then
there
it's
or
putting
not?
yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on
You
that,
didn't answer the question.
the question was, can you explain the
No, just
discrepancy?
all I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So
All right, thank
I
you.
will just.
That's all you had to
that's what
fucking
I've
say
said.
the first time. Like, you misspoke.
So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out to messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're not probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration.
$27 billion they had to pay farmers
Kamala
because
Harris
of them tariff
has run
wars.
away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all
Explain
into
what the
motion.
bill says first.
He brags about how great it was that he put
God,
the
this is
judges
so
in and
frustrating.
overturned Roe versus
Say
Wade.
what the
52
bill
years of
says.
Personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country,
Nobody
who
answered
proudly
the
wants to
question.
protect the
I guess we
vulnerable,
just
is that my party,
just
we've
let
got
it
to
be a
do
free
so
fall.
much better of a job
The
at
last four
earning
questions,
the
or the
American
last three
people's
questions,
trust back on
neither
this
one
issue
answered.
where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real
Actually, the
chance
case he's
that
talking
Amber
about now,
Thurman lived in Minnesota.
a Georgia
she would be alive
a
today.
Georgia judge
That's why
shot
the
Georgia's
restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject,
abortion
and you hear
bill
me talk about
down
it, you hear
because
us
of that
talking
case
exactly
right
the
there
same.
he's talking about.
Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this.
Which I'm
I
pretty
agree
sure
with
Georgia's
a lot
going
of
to
what
appeal
Senator
it and
Vance said
win.
about what's happening.
But the judge
His
said
running
that
mate,
wasn't
though,
right.
does not, and that's the
Do away
problem.
with the abortion
Governor,
bill.
your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me. But as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or pro-abortion,
This is why you should
that is
explain
fundamentally
the
barbaric.
bill
And
when she
that's why
asked you
I
the
use
first
that
time,
word, Nora,
idiot.
is because some of what we've seen. Do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong
This
about,
was-
Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong
That is
about?
not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation.
Why won't
of
you
these
explain
guys
the bill?
to try and tell
See,
women
this is
or to
why
get
people-
involved. I use this line on this.
Dude,
Just
you
mind
say
your own
he's
business
wrong.
on
Explain
this.
the
Things
bill.
worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works
OMG.
best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making
The
sure
only
that once
thing
that
you're
child's
doing
born, like in
is
Minnesota,
making people think that he's right.
They get early
because you
childhood
want to explain
education.
the bill.
They get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what
Explain
the
the
law says.
bill
So, yeah,
then.
fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS
Why would
News
this man
Vice
explain the
Presidential
bill?
debate in just a moment.
This is the problem with politicians. They refuse to answer questions, direct questions. If the man is wrong about what he's saying about the bill, why not just explain the bill? If he's wrong. What you're making people think that he's right.
The House will be in order.
Because you refuse to explain the
C-SPAN
bill.
celebrates 45 years of covering
It's so,
Congress like
it's
no
so
other. Since
I
1979,
get so frustrated.
we've been your primary source for
So
Capitol Hill,
frustrated with politicians
providing balanced,
not
unfiltered
want to
coverage of government,
explain an
taking you to
answer.
where the
A
policy is
simple
debated
answer.
and decided.
I don't care
all
if you're a
with the support of
Republican or a
America's cable
Democrat.
companies.
If someone asks you a direct
C-SPAN,
question and you saying they
45
wrong,
years and counting.
explain it
Powered by
for the
cable.
people. OMG.
Friday nights, watch C-SPAN's
What's up, Darius?
2024 Campaign Trail, a weekly discussion on how the presidential, Senate, and House campaigns have progressed in the past week. Two reporters
So
join
far,
each week to talk about the issues, messages, and events
neither one
driving
is
the
really
week's political
answering the
news,
questions.
and to take a look at the week ahead.
All the
Watch
questions being answered
C-SPAN's
so far, I don't think
2024
neither one
Campaign
answered the
Trail.
question directly.
Friday nights at
No matter
7
if you're a
Eastern
Democrat
on
or
C-SPAN,
Republican, neither one is
online
answering the
at
questions.
C-SPAN.org,
And it's so
or download
frustrating
the
that you're
podcast
watching
on
this
C-SPAN now,
and
our
no
free
one
mobile
answers
app,
questions.
or wherever you
And the
get your
moderators are
podcasts.
stupid because they're not
C-SPAN,
forcing them to answer
your
the question.
unfiltered view
I
of
think
politics.
you shouldn't move on to the next question until you answer the question that was given to you. Bottom line.
Attention, middle and high school students. It's time to make your voice
Nah,
heard.
they're not
C-SPAN
fact-checking.
Student Cam
No,
documentary
that was
contest
part of the
2025
deal
this
that they
year.
wouldn't fact
This
check
is your chance
anyone.
to create a
They was going to
documentary
allow
that
the
can inspire change,
candidates
raise
to fact check
awareness,
each other.
and make an impact. Your documentary should answer
Even
this
though
year's
J.D.
question.
Vance think
Your
that he was
message to
fact
the
checked
president. What issue
when
is most
one of
important
the
to you
moderators
or
said
your
something about,
community?
you know,
Whether
who the
you're
migrants they were
passionate about
talking about in
politics
Springfield
or
was.
community stories,
He thought he was being
Student
fact
Cam is
checked,
your
which
platform
wasn't a
to
fact
share
check.
your message with $100,000 in prizes, including a grand prize of $5,000. Enter your submissions today. Scan the code or visit studentcam.org for all the details on how to enter. The deadline is January 20th, 2025.
Start your day with Washington Journal, your window into the nation's capital, the only daily nationally televised forum for discussing the latest issues in Washington and across the country.
What I love about your show is that it gives the people an opportunity to speak for themselves on the issues that they actually care about.
Join us for a live 3-hour conversation with a variety of congressional members and Washington influencers.
I love this show. This is my favorite show to do of all shows because I actually get to hear what the American people care about.
You can watch Washington Journal live every morning at 7 Eastern on C-SPAN, C-SPAN Now, or online at cspan.org. C-SPAN Now is a free mobile app featuring your unfiltered view of what's happening in Washington, live and on demand. Keep up with the day's biggest events with live streams of floor proceedings and hearings from the U.S. Congress, White House events, the courts, campaigns, and more from the world of politics, all at your fingertips. You can also stay current with the latest episodes of Washington Journal and find scheduling information for C-SPAN's TV networks and C-SPAN Radio, plus a variety of compelling podcasts. C-SPAN Now is available at the Apple Store and Google Play. Scan the QR code to download it for free today or visit our website, cspan.org/C-SPAN Now. C-SPAN Now, your front row seat to Washington, anytime, anywhere.
The CBS News Vice Presidential Debate simulcast is about to resume after taking a short break. This is being held at the CBS Broadcast Center in New York City.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that worked. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country.
Yeah, but the thing about it is Republicans do not want to put in red flag laws.
I don't think it's the whole reason why
that's
we have
part
such
of
a
the
bad
problem
gun
also.
violence problem.
There is no red flag laws in a lot of these states.
Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn.
And see, this is the part that really gets me pissed because they know that there's a lot of issues out there with mental health.
This is why
they
we
still
have to
refuse to
empower
put
law
in
enforcement
red flag
to arrest
laws.
the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters.
Red
I've
flag
seen it.
laws,
Look, the NRA, I was
ban
NRA guy for a
military
long time.
style
They used to
assault
teach gun
weapons.
safety.
Those
I'm
are
of
two
an age
major
where
things that need to be done.
My shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all
And
of the
also holding
issues,
the parents accountable also.
making sure folks have
Hold
health care and
those
all that, but
parents
I want to be very
accountable for what
careful.
their kids
This
are
idea
doing.
of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top.
That right there is the
contributor
best
to
part. That was the best
inflation,
part so far
high
of the
cost
debate.
of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country. Which
immigrants are not buying up homes. So I don't know.
25
That's
million
not,
illegal
immigrants have
aliens
nothing to do with buying
competing
up
with Americans
homes.
for scarce
Bottom line.
homes is one of the most significant drivers of home
If you
prices
think immigrants
in
are
the
buying up
country. It's
homes,
why we
you're
have
lying to the people.
massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree
She asked you
with.
about
The
your
most
plan,
important
not
thing
his
here is
plan. So let's get to
Kamala
your
Harris
plan,
is
buddy.
not
Stop
running as a
filibustering. Here we
newcomer
go
to
again.
politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign
biochemical,
and do nothing while
fire
Americans
smoke?
find the American dream of
Where was
homeownership
that at?
completely unaffordable.
Oh,
Now,
that
you
was
asked, Margaret, what would
it
immediately
wasn't.
change
It wasn't
the
near my
equation for
mom's.
American
It wasn't near
citizens
my family.
if you lower
You
energy
told me the one in
prices,
Georgia
as
that
Donald
happened the
Trump
other day,
says,
right?
drill baby drill.
That wasn't
one of the
near my
biggest
mom's.
drivers of
my
housing
mom's
costs
house.
aside from illegal immigration.
But thank you,
is
though.
think about it.
Thank you,
If a truck
Griff, for
driver's
that.
paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer
Can I have it?
where? Yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in
Well, of course, that's not
migrants,
true. And again,
that
you
it's
have the
affecting
facts. I
housing
guess we
prices.
agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's again blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's
your
the study?
time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a federal
He doesn't
Reserve
have
study that we'll have to
any
share after the debate.
evidence.
We'll put it up on social
It's
media, actually.
nothing
that
but
really
hogwash.
drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. I think it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency.
But it was up about 1.5%.
You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That
They
price
fail,
transparency
but
will actually give American
entire 4
consumers
years, they
a
was
little
up
bit more
by 1%.
choice, and will also drive down costs. And we talked about,
And that makes sense.
the
The math
reinsurance
not adding up
regulations is
there.
what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill, but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along.
What? What did he say?
Point about President Trump. Of course,
He said
don't have to agree
Obamacare
with
was
everything
doing
that President
disastrously until
has
Trump
ever
came
said
along?
or ever done.
What?
But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs,
Hold on.
Donald Trump could have
What did
destroyed
Trump
the program.
do
Instead, he
to
worked
make
in a
Medicare,
bipartisan way to
healthcare
ensure
better
that Americans had access
other
to
than
affordable
Obamacare?
care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can
You see
do.
how they lied?
But I think that Donald Trump has
He lied
earned
and
the
just
right
kept going.
to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
Oh.
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the
Oh.
reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma,
I can't believe you
if you're a
said
woman,
that.
probably not. Broke your foot during football, might
What
kick you
Donald
out.
Trump did
Your kids get
made
kicked
the
out when they're 26.
Obamacare better.
Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with
Damn.
Medicare. We have 10 drugs
That
that
was
will come
crazy.
online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my
cracked me
kid
up
would have
too.
never given me that.
A
But
concept
what
of a
Senator
plan.
Vance just explained might be worse than a concept because what he explained is pre-Obamacare.
No,
And I'll
what
make this as
JD
simple
just
as
said was a
possible because
lie.
I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions.
Bullshit.
But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have
He
collapsed
saved
absent
Obamacare.
his leadership.
He's
He
actually
did his
saying that
job, which is
Obama-
govern in a bipartisan way
that he
and get
saved
results, not
the
just complain
ACA.
about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then
So
what
you
happens
think the
is
individual mandate's a good idea?
you shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of
Go ahead,
time. We have a
Nora.
number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
12 weeks.
Yeah, well,
12
that's
weeks.
negotiable, and that's what Congress
12
works. But here's what
weeks.
the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. those companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start. The family works better. We stay in their employers. We get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue. Those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our
What's up,
families,
Kanyan?
and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do
Kanyan,
you
I agree with
support a
you,
national
but
paid leave
neither
program?
one is
And
answering the
if
question.
So,
Neither
for how
one.
long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn?
12
You have
weeks.
2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats too have worked on this issue, and I think there
What's
is a
so hard about saying
bipartisan
12
solution
weeks?
here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator, and I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really
Most states
hard
who
for
do
people
have
to choose
paid
the family
leave,
model they want. A lot of young women
paternal
would like
leave
to
for
go back
kids,
to
I mean,
work
for
immediately. Some would like
for
to
a
spend a
mother
little
or
time home
father.
with the kids. Some would like to spend
The
longer
mother
at
get
home with
12
the kids.
weeks,
We should
and the
have
father
a
get 2
family
weeks.
care model
I think that's,
that
and I
makes
know in Mass,
choice
the state of Mass
possible. I
have
think
12
this
weeks,
is a very
and I think the
important
father get
substantive
2 weeks
difference
instead of
between
Mass.
Donald Trump
I
and
might be
Kamala
wrong about the
Harris's
2 weeks,
approach. I mean,
but I
look,
think it's
if
2
you look
weeks.
at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work
See,
or
this is
taking
what I
care
mean.
of their
Neither one
kids.
is answering
That is an
questions.
incredible
Simple
burden
question, you
to
know,
put on
do you
American
support a
families. We're
national
the
paid
only country that does it.
parental
I think we could do a
leave
heck of a lot
program?
better.
And it's like,
Senator, thank you.
answer the question,
you have
yes or
also
no.
said,
How many
Senator
weeks?
Vance,
And they
many
can't do
things
it.
about
It's just
the
so
American
stupid.
family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the
if
heart
that was
of
the
the
case,
Donald
he
Trump
was in
economic
office 4
plan.
years.
Cut taxes for American
Why
workers
did
and
he
American
run a debt
families.
up of
Cut
$8
taxes
trillion?
for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America.
If
but
that was the case, he
penalize
did it the first
companies
time.
and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the
He
heart
didn't
of
do
the
it the first
economic
time, so what
proposal.
makes him think
And I
he's gonna do it the
what
second
President Trump
time?
is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are
That's
viable
not
and
true.
workable for a lot of
Like I
American
said, you
families.
paid farmers $27 billion because of that
Can you
tariff war with
clarify how
China.
that will solve the childcare
It's
shortage?
not going to solve it.
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the childcare shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide childcare options for American families.
Also,
because the reason it's so
You're
expensive
talking
right
about
now
spending
is
money on
because you've got
childcare.
way too few people
How about
providing
those
this
tax
very
cuts?
essential
You're
service.
going to take more money out
Thank
of
you, Senator.
the
Governor Walz,
IRS with the
your
tax
ticket
cuts.
also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this.
You want to
We
give
thought
tax
we were going to
cuts
get
to
by not
billionaires and
paying people.
millionaires
I
and
don't think Senator
corporations,
Vance or
but
that,
you
and I are
don't,
that
you
far
only think
apart. I'm not opposed to what he's
$6,000
talking
or
about on
$3,000
options. We've done
is too
scholarship
much
types
money
of things. I think we need to be open
for,
to making the case.
for a
But
tax
the
credit for
issue here
kids?
is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by
good.
President Trump and other Republican presidents,
Especially when it
looked at
comes to
the
J.D.
evidence
Vance. I
and
really
said
want to hear his
there was
answer on
no
this.
widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's
There we go
policies,
again.
make housing affordable.
Oh,
make
my
groceries affordable,
God, man.
And that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020. And my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square. And that's all I've said. And that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said
all
that
what
on
Donald
January
Trump
the
has
6th, the
said?
protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship.
Oh,
It's
my God,
Americans
censorship.
casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that to me is a
How do we know censorship? We're talking about democracy and
what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
But did they peacefully protest
Well, I've
on
enjoyed
January
tonight's
6th?
debate. And I
They
think
did
there
the
was a lot of
opposite.
commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator. But
me
there's,
too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years.
Trump didn't even come to the ceremony.
Hands after this
he was
debate and
pouting
after
like a
this
little
election.
baby.
Of course,
He
I
didn't
hope
even
that
come
we
to the
win, and I think
ceremony.
we're gonna
So
win, but
stop
if
all the
Tim Walz is
nonsense
the next
about
vice
Trump gave
president,
up power.
he'll have my
blah, blah,
prayers,
blah,
he'll
blah.
have my best
He was
wishes, and
crying
he'll
like
have
a
my
little
help
bitch.
whenever he
Didn't even
he-
come
he
to the
wants it.
ceremony.
But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016
Stop that nonsense
said
about
that Donald
protesting.
Trump had the election
No one
stolen
never
by
attacked the
Vladimir
Capitol
Putin
like
because
Trump
the
and his
Russians bought like
supporters did.
$500,000
Just
worth of
because Hillary
Facebook
clearly
ads.
said that
This has been going on
Donald
for a
Trump
long
was
time.
illegitimate,
And if we want
she
to
did
say
concede,
that we need to
but
respect
no
the
one
results of
attacked the
election,
Capitol
I'm on
because
board.
of it.
But if we
So
want to
all
say,
that
as
shit
Tim
you
Walz
talking
is saying,
about
that
Hillary
this is
Clinton
just a
is
problem that
bullshit.
Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor?
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. But this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is
Has she tried
that is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation.
Hate speech
Kamala
should be
Harris wants to
banned.
use the
Violent
power of
speech should be
government
banned.
and big
So
tech
what
to
are you
silence
talking
people
about?
from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that
That's
will
not
long
fucking-
outlive this present
that's
political
not
moment.
fucking,
I would like Democrats and Republicans to both
hindering your free
reject
speech. That's
censorship.
protecting people
Let's
from
persuade
violence
one another.
and
Let's
nonsense and
argue
hate
about
speech.
ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the governor
masks.
does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the
No,
right of every
that's
American.
being
Senator, the governor
sensible
does have the floor
and
for 1
reasonable
minute
when it
to
comes to
respond to
people's
you.
health.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
The House will be in order.
This year, C-SPAN celebrates 45 years of covering Congress like no other. Since 1979, we've been your primary source for Capitol Hill, providing balanced, unfiltered coverage of government, taking you to where the policy is debated and decided, all with the support of America's cable companies. C-SPAN, 45 years and counting, powered by cable.
Friday nights, watch C-SPAN's 2024 Campaign Trail, a weekly discussion on how the presidential, Senate, and House campaigns have progressed in the past week. Two reporters join each week to talk about the issues, messages, and events driving the week's political news and to take a look at the week ahead. Watch C-SPAN's 2024 Campaign Trail, Friday nights at 7 Eastern on C-SPAN, online at cspan.org, or download as a podcast on C-SPAN Now, our free mobile app, or wherever you get your podcasts. C-SPAN, your unfiltered view of politics.
Attention, middle and high school students. It's time to make your voice heard. C-SPAN Student Cam Documentary Contest 2025 is here. This is your chance to create a documentary that can inspire change, raise awareness, and make an impact. Your documentary should answer this year's question: your message to the president. What issue is most important to you or your community? Whether you're passionate about politics or community stories, Student Cam is your platform to share your message with $100,000 in prizes, including a grand prize of $5,000. Enter your submissions today. Scan the code or visit studentcam.org for all the details on how to enter. The deadline is January 20th, 2025.
Start your day with Washington Journal, your window into the nation's capital, the only daily nationally televised forum for discussing the latest issues in Washington and across the country.
What I love about your show is that it gives the people an opportunity to speak for themselves on the issues that they actually care about.
Join us for a live 3-hour conversation with a variety of congressional members and Washington influencers.
I love this show. This is my favorite show to do of all shows because I actually get to hear what the American people care about.
You can watch Washington Journal live every morning at 7 Eastern on C-SPAN, C-SPAN Now, or online at cspan.org. C-SPAN Now is a free mobile app featuring your unfiltered view of what's happening in Washington, live and on demand. Keep up with the day's biggest events with live streams of floor proceedings and hearings from the U.S. Congress, White House events, the courts, campaigns, and more from the world of politics, all at your fingertips. You can also stay current with the latest episodes of Washington Journal and find scheduling information for C-SPAN's TV networks and C-SPAN Radio, plus a variety of compelling podcasts. C-SPAN Now is available at the Apple Store and Google Play. Scan the QR code to download it for free today or visit our website, cspan.org/C-SPAN Now. C-SPAN Now, your front row seat to Washington, anytime, anywhere.
And now back to CBS Broadcast Center in New York City for the final minutes of tonight's live simulcast of the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people.
I think she had more of a policy than Donald Trump
They're
has.
not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at CBS News, thank you and good night.
I'm not going to lie. I was very disappointed. I seen two people and neither one wanted to answer the questions. I'm like, disappointed. And this is why I really don't like debates when it comes to politicians, because they never answer questions. Neither one really answered the questions. Tim Walz didn't answer the question. JD Vance didn't really answer the questions. So I'm really disappointed, totally disappointed. I think it was a waste of my time, your time, and a lot of other people's time. You know what, Classic? You might have a point about certain things, but see, y'all don't want to be honest about Donald Trump. That's the problem. I can tell you that Kamala sometimes she tends to seem like a robot, like she's programmed. But I can be honest. But can you be honest about Donald Trump? Think about it. And then you talk about lying. Why would you even bring up the word lying when we all know that's all Donald Trump does is lie? He lies about everything. He tells simple lies. Just like the other day when he went to Valdosta and he said that Joe Biden had ignored the governor of Georgia. And the day before, the governor of Georgia just said that he had talked to Joe Biden. Simple lies. So don't never use the word lying to me about Kamala Harris. Please don't. Every time Trump opens his mouth, he's lying about something. Come on, man. See, y'all need to be real. I can tell you what I don't like about Kamala Harris, but can you tell me what you don't like about Trump? See, there you go. See, you can say all that you want, but until you can tell me what Trump lies about, I don't need to hear about Kamala Harris. Tell me what your man lied about. Tell me what he's doing wrong. See, I can be real. I'm a real center independent person. I can tell you what I believe in. I can tell you what I don't like about both candidates. Just like tonight with this VP debate. I can tell you both of them didn't answer questions. And both of them pissed me off. Every time he opened his mouth, he's saying something to hurt the country, which is a lie. What are you talking about? Just like he's saying the immigrants in Ohio, in Springfield, the immigrants in Springfield are illegal undocumented aliens, which is not true. They are here legally. So what are you talking about? He never says anything to hurt this country. Come on, Classic, man. See, this is why you can't have a conversation, a debate with a Trump supporter. because they're not going to tell you the truth. They're not going to be honest. Be honest, man. Come on. Come on. You can't debate with a person when the only thing they're throwing out is lies. Everything you're saying is a lie. I just told you a lie he told yesterday that was a lie, a simple lie he told that was easily debunked. See, this is what I'm saying, man. Come on, man. We need to be more honest with each other. See, this is why I said politicians like Donald Trump is dividing this country. Because you have some people like you, Classic, who believes everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth, which is a lie. It's like, for instance, he's saying that he had this great economy the 4 years he was in office, but he paid out $27 billion to farmers because of a tariff war with China. And he claimed he won that. How can you win something when you're paying out money to cover up for the lack? Come on, man. Hey, you know what? Americans is not in no war right now. How many wars are they fighting in right now? Yeah, they are in hostile territory, but how many sailors or Marines or soldiers have lost their lives since Biden took over? And I know you're gonna bring up Afghanistan. That's true, but Israel had nothing to do with the U.S. per se. Ukraine has nothing to do with U.S. per se. Only thing they're doing is funding the weapons. That's it. There is no Americans involved with those conflicts. There is no Americans fighting in Israel right now. There is no Americans fighting in Ukraine right now. So what are we talking about here? Only thing America is doing is funding the wars. That's it. Where the war at? What war is that? I disagree with you, Classic. See, this is the thing. See, two things I don't like. I don't like arguing with people who take stuff for liars, and I don't like arguing with people who are conspiracy theorists. I don't, because you can't beat that. You can't argue against people who don't want to see reality. And the reality is, only thing America's doing right now is spending money. They're not spending lives, it's spending money. There is no troops in Ukraine. There's no troops in Israel. Yes, there are some troops in the Middle East, but they're not fighting a war. So you really think we got American troops fighting in Ukraine? Hey, if that's what you want to believe, that's what you want to believe. And I know some Americans did volunteer to go there. Non-military service members volunteered to go and help Ukraine, but those are not American soldiers. They're not tied to the American military. They're citizens who volunteered to go and fight in Ukraine. That's it. I'm saying what you I hate. What is that, Classic? You are just saying what you hate without knowing. What are you talking about? That's true. I hate conspiracy theorists, and I hate people who take stuff for liars. Donald Trump is a liar, and you sit there and you take up for him, and he's nothing but a liar and a con man. Bottom line, you know that, and I know that. Come on, let's be real, Classic. Don't just say it. Let's live it. You know that Donald Trump is a liar. Answer that question for me, Classic. Is Donald Trump a liar? Do he lie more than a normal politician does? Answer that question. Our military just went viral recording and documenting what's going on while Harris lied to the country. You know what? Only thing she said was she misspoke. She said that we wasn't involved with any conflict. Now, The problem with that was she forgot that we was in the Red Sea and we had been firing missiles into Yemen. She forgot about that because that's what they were talking about, the Red Sea and what was going on in the Red Sea. And then, yes, we got troops in Syria. We got troops in Iraq still. So what I think, see, this is my thing with that. She got confused. What she was talking about was a major conflict. She talking about major conflict where there is American lives on the line every day, as in they're actually out there fighting. That's what she was talking about. But I agree. Yeah, she did lie about that. She did use misleading words. So I agree. I'm not going to deny that part. There's troops in Iraq still. There's troops in Syria still. There are sailors in the Red Sea. So they're in hostile territory. So I agree with that. But still, you're not answering my question. Do Donald Trump lies? Answer that question. So you know everything about Harris, but you're not talking about Donald Trump. Do Donald Trump lie? Come on, my brother. Answer that question. No response to that question? Do Donald Trump lie? Oh, I guess I don't get no response to that question, I guess. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't see your comment. He lies. We all lies. I'm sorry. I didn't see that comment. So you didn't answer the question. So you did admit that he do lies. All right. I appreciate that. I see it now. My fault. I didn't see that. I didn't see the answer at first. I appreciate you answering that question. Thank you, Classic. Well, when you're talking about someone forgetting something and behaving a certain way, Donald Trump is the most disgusting individual when it comes to a person running for president and being president. So I would take Harris any day over Donald Trump and his rhetoric. Bottom line. And the thing about that is, you fail to realize this right here also is, a lot of people disagree with Harris and her policies, but they're going to vote for her because Donald Trump have no character. He have character issues. Think about it. This guy is a graper. This guy is the most horrible person ever to run for president. Ever. Some of the things that comes out of his mouth. He's trying to scare people into voting for him. That's all he's doing. Scaring people. Fear, 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 fear. Why can't you talk about your policies? Why can't you talk about what you did right in your first administration? But no, he can't do that. Only thing he want to do is talk about fear and lie. That's it. That's all you want to do. And on top of that, y'all give him credit for a great economy when he ran in his first administration, which is false. Think about this right here. Obama left him in good shape. All he had to do was maintain what Obama did, and that's what he did. He maintained what Obama did. And then y'all talking about inflation. Remember, in 2020, inflation was 0.14, I believe. And the reason why it was 0.14, because everybody was shut in. Everybody was at home. No one was buying anything. No prices was going up. No gas prices was going up because everybody was at home, shut in 2020. And y'all keep bragging about 2020 and inflation was 1.4 and all this nonsense. Yes, it was 1.4, not because of Donald Trump, because everybody was sitting at home. Why would prices go up when no one is buying anything? That was stupid. That would be stupid. See, this is the thing where people need to think and use their head. Why was inflation so low in 2020? Because no one was buying anything. Everybody was at home. That was it. Now, 2021 comes along. Why do things go up in price? Because America is opening back up. So inflation rises because prices are going up because now everybody is going out shopping and these retailers and these grocery stores need to get their money back. So everything goes up. And also there's a supply chain issue to the point where it forces prices to go up also. See, a lot of people don't think about what really happened in 2020 and 2021. A lot of people don't understand why inflation, well, they pretend like they don't understand why inflation was so high in 2021 and why inflation was so low in 2020. You have to understand a race issue. Come on, man, stop it. Donald Trump is the only one that brought up her race. She don't even talk about her race. She tries to avoid that conversation. And one reason I think she tried to avoid the conversation because of that, what you just said. Because people like you gonna say, oh, the only thing she want to do is talk about her race. Biden ruined Black America? No. Black America ruined Black America. You can't blame, you know what? I'm gonna say this right here. And you might like this. You might like it, you might not like it. I don't blame no president for the state of Black America. I don't give a fuck if it's Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush, Clinton. I don't care who it is. I don't blame no one for the state of Black America. I blame Black Americans for the state of Black America. Bottom line. And the reason why, because I see it every freaking day. I see it every day. I see it every freaking day. I see it in my workplace. I see it when I'm going and coming from home and going back and forth to work. I see it when I'm out shopping for groceries. I see it when I'm out just doing anything. We ruin our own selves. We are our own worst enemies. Bottom line. I have evolved so much on that subject that I somewhat feel like Tommy now, to be honest with you. I have come a long ways when it comes to that. I don't blame no one for the state of Black America. I don't. I blame ourselves. I blame us for our own issues. That and that's how I feel now. You know, I sit back and I think about what have we done to improve ourselves over the years? Nothing. Your argument isn't our argument, King. That's a disconnect between liberals and us. It's not even a liberal thing. It's not a liberal thing, and it's not a conservative thing. It is a Black thing. Bottom line. And that's something that we need to all wake up to and realize we need to stop blaming everybody else for our issues and look at ourselves in the mirror and say, look, we need to change ourselves. We need to change our own mentality. We need to get up and fix ourselves. That's what we need to do. Like I said, I think a couple of years ago, I did a video when I was showing you where I live at, how Black people don't care about their living arrangement. They don't care about them. They don't care about where they live. They come into a nice neighborhood and they fuck it up. They fuck it up. Who do you blame for that? You blame a liberal for that? You blame a conservative for that? No, you blame Black people for that. And I'm living proof. in my neighborhood. I see it every freaking day. I see it every freaking day. I've been living here for going on 7 years. Matter of fact, next month will be 7 years I've been living here. And I have seen a downturn in my neighborhood because of the people who are moving in my neighborhood. And I'm just being real. And this is the problem. We have to be real. When I see my people throwing trash on the ground, when the trash can is 20 feet away, when I see my people not picking up their dog shit, when they know the rule is you need to pick up your dog shit, when I see my people not closing the freaking trash can door, when there's a big old sign that says we need to make sure we close the trash can door because of rodent issues, when I see all this, it is us. It's us. No one else but us. Bottom line. And that's what I'm talking about. We need to police ourselves first and stop blaming other people for issues that we are doing. When you talk about jobs, there's plenty of jobs for Black people. But you know what? And I'm not going to tell you where I work at. I'm not ready to tell people where I work at. But the thing about that is the worst people, and I'm being honest, the worst department at my job is full of Black people. That's honest God, the truth. Because of the mentality. We don't care. We don't care. We got poor work ethics. And then we sit back and complain about Hispanics coming in and taking our jobs, or this person getting this or that person getting that. And it's really us. It's us. You know what? I can care less about that argument because that's a dumb argument about what she told America that she wasn't Black, because honestly, she went to a Black university when she was 18, 19 years old. She pledged to a Black sorority when she was 18, 19 years old. So I can care less about the argument. That's not even an argument to me anymore. I can care less about that. Not only that, we look at Obama. Why are we even having this discussion about what color she is? We had Obama, who had a white mother, whose mother was white. No one questioned his Blackness. No one questioned his Blackness. So why are we sitting here arguing about Kamala and her Blackness? Come on, man. It's stupid arguments, man. I don't like arguing about stupid things. That's a stupid argument. Like I said, and that's what detractors, we get distracted from the real issues in the Black community because we talk about nonsense stuff. We want to talk about Kamala and her Blackness instead of talking about the real issues in the Black community that we are causing ourselves. See, this is what frustrates me the most. We argue about stupid things that doesn't make sense. We already had a Black man we had a mixed Black man in the White House already. So why are we sitting here arguing about Kamala and her heritage when she got a Black father and an Indian mother? Matter of fact, she's more Blacker than Obama because her mother was a person of color, at least. Obama's mother was white. But we having a stupid argument about her being Black. Come on, man. Y'all need to get real, man. That's stupid. That is so stupid. Come on. Let's talk about something relevant. Let's talk about something we need to talk about. I don't want to talk about Kamala's skin color anymore, what she claimed to be or what not claimed to be. I don't even want to talk about that. That to me, they're just stupid. Especially after Obama. That's why it's really stupid. Think about that, Classic. We talking about something that already happened already. We talk about a woman who pledged a Black sorority when she was 18, 19 years old. We talk about a woman who went to a HBCU. And we talking about what she said. Come on, man. One of these days, man, like I said, I'm a real independent person. You know, I speak the truth and I speak no matter what people like or dislike about what I'm saying, it's my truth. And I'm gonna speak my truth. I'm gonna tell people how I really feel. I don't care if it's on the right, agreeing with the right or agreeing with the left. Because there's some things I agree with on the right. You know, there's a lot of things I agree with on the left. You know, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the border, you know, I think we should close the border. I think we should limit the amount of people coming in to the border. But at the same time, I feel like we need to make people who've been here for years, like the DACA kids, those kids should be citizens by now. And anybody who served, and matter of fact, what really gets me the most is they don't do the simple things. You have had people die serving this country in the military who wasn't even citizens. That wasn't even citizens. I feel like anybody who served this country who are not a citizen, once they complete their 4 years, 4 or 5 years, automatically get citizenship. That should be an easy bill to write and pass. But we don't do the simple things. We don't do the simple things. And it's sad that we don't do simple things like that. We are so divided in this country now that we can't agree on nothing. We got DACA kids who've been in this country since day one, who was born, who came across the border with their parents when they was like 2-3 years old, been in here 20 years, they're paying taxes, and they still cannot become citizens. That's crazy. But like I said, I do agree that we should close the border. When you get a high volume of people coming through the border, we should close it. And then on top of that, I feel like anybody who don't come through a port of entry should automatically be deported. There's no hearings, there's nothing. No. If you don't come through a port of entry and you just come through some section of the border willy-nilly, you should automatically be deported. Automatically be sent back. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And like I said, I'm the type of person, I believe some things on the right is true that need to be taken care of, and some things on the left are most definitely true. But I'm independent. I'm a true independent. I can speak on a lot of things. And my people, my Black people, I think we need to stop crying, stop playing victim, and look in the mirror at ourselves and say, look, we need to do better. We need to do better. We need to stop blaming everybody else for our problems and start looking at ourselves and correct our own behavior. So it's a lot of things I just think can change. But as long as we got people like Classic who want to talk about nonsense like skin color and what she said about being Black or Asian or whatever, nothing will never change. Because we get so caught up in politics and partisan politics that we don't think about reality. And that's part of the problem. To be honest, that's part of the problem. We need to think more outside the box. Well, we need to think more as independents. That's the first step. Start using your own brain and stop listening to these politicians who only thing they want to do is divide you. They want to put fear in you. They want to keep you in prison mind-wise. Because that's what they're doing, imprisoning you, your mind. You're not thinking. Most people who follow politics don't even think for themselves anymore. They let the left think for them, or they let the right think for them. And that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. And people need to wise up to that. Think for yourself. Be an independent thinker. You know, one thing that changed over the last 20, 25 years, talking points. I remember when I first started hearing about talking points. You know, corporations came out with talking points first. They give you a sheet of paper, you read off of it. And then after that, politicians caught on to it. They start reading off paper. Everybody got a talking point. That's what ruined this country also. No one thinks for themselves anymore. Look at politicians. You can look at news. You can look at 10 different politicians on the left or on the right, and they all repeating the same thing because they give him talking points. No one can think for themselves anymore. It's sad. It's really sad. And it's crazy. It's really crazy. All right, I guess I'm gonna end this now. I appreciate the people who came through and looked at the debate with me, and I appreciate the people who stuck around after the debate. So thank you guys for supporting the stream. Thank you guys for coming through. I don't know when I'm coming back again. You know me, I was very, I come once a month, once every 3 weeks. I'm not sure when I'm coming again, but thank you guys for coming through, the ones who come through. Thank you, Griff, especially Griff, because Griff is always supporting my stream. So I want to really thank Griff because she's always here. Every stream I do, every video I put out, she's always making a comment. She's always in my stream. So thank you, especially Griff. I really appreciate you the most. So until next time, y'all have a good night, and I'll see y'all later.